Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to paint a Necron Psychomancer in the Grimdark style. This is one of my favorite looking models and I've had this on my shelf for years before taking the plunge and painting it up. So let's get started. So after you've painfully assembled this model, we're going to prime this with Chaos Black, and then we're going to start applying our metals. Our base metal is going to be Vallejo's Model Color Natural Steel, and we're going to apply this to the tentacles, arms, head, and main body. After that, take some Stormhost Silver from Citadel and we're going to do a light to medium dry brush but focusing on the top facing parts of the model to add a little bit of depth and to create a subtle light source for our model. Be gentle on some of these parts, this model is a little fragile. I'm then going to base the gold elements with Pro Acrylics Bright Gold. Do this in a few coats so you have nice coverage on the model. Next, I decided to use some Iron Warriors to paint the staff and to add some variation on the tones of metal I've used so far. I also took some black paint and cleaned up the blade that some metal spilled onto so we have a nice clean base when we start our glazing. Taking some Pro Acrylic Bold Titanium White, I'm going to paint the skull with this, as this will serve as the base for our contrast paint. Once everything is based, we're going to start our washes. Taking a 60-40 mix of Streaking Grime and Mineral Spirits, cover the whole model except the skull with it using a cheap brush. Then, after it is applied, dip a Q-tip into the mineral spirits, dab most of it off with a paper towel, and then start dabbing and removing some of the streaking grime off. I didn't varnish before this, usually I do, but I wanted that metal to come through. So if you choose not to varnish, be gentle when you start this process so you don't remove any of our metal colors. Depending on how much grime you want, just keep working the model with mineral spirits and a Q-tip. After that is dried, I used a homemade black oil wash made out of black oil paint and mineral spirits and applied it not as liberally as our streaking grime, but to a good portion of our model to tone down the metal a little bit. I wanted to try some products for this step, but my local hobby shops didn't have what I was looking for in stock, so I made this wash instead. After applied, take a cheap brush or Q-tip and do the same process as before and work off some of the wash and manipulate it to create a more mottled look. Going back to our bright gold and Stormhost silver, I'm going to do some stippling and select edge highlighting to bring out some of the detail on the main body of the model, mainly focusing on where the light would catch the edges if the light were coming from above the model. At this point, I'm going to start prepping the model for our glowing bits. I base the eye, orb on its back, and the small nodes on the tentacles with our titanium white. I also decided that I wanted to do different colors on his body and the skull, so using Vallejo's foul green, based the eye, orb, and other small nodes on his body with this instead. I decided to have this color transition from green to blue on the tentacles, so I'm going to paint the first 8 or so nodes closest to his body with foul green, and later we're going to blend blue onto those to get a nice transition. Now we are going to start our glow effects using the glazing technique to do this. So using very thinned down foul green, we're going to start applying layers around our glow sources, and we are going to build up our layers the closer we get to the glow source. This takes a lot of practice and patience, and it's something that I'm still learning how to do effectively, so just be patient. With that being said, I would recommend searching how to do OSL for more professional painters, and they may be able to teach you a little bit better than I can at the moment. We are also going to use this technique to the blade that he is holding, but we aren't going to make it look like it's a glowing light source. I took a screenshot from a Pariah Nexus clip of Luminor Xeris' blade, and I'm going to use that as a rough reference for this blade. The only difference is I want a more desaturated green compared to our reference, but using the same methods of thinning down foul green, I start building up the color and effect I wanted on the blade, and once it becomes opaque, I switch to ghost green and to start the same process of thin layers to build up a gradient and create this effect on the blade. I also did this on his eye, but I couldn't film that well, so I did it off camera. I also took some thinned down ghost green and applied it onto the back of his orb and on the edges closest to the orb to help try create that glowing effect. Using a 1-to-1 ratio of Talazar blue and contrast medium, we're going to liberally apply it to the skull, but only to the outermost sides of the skull. There are going to be a lot of different faces on this portion of the model, so be sure to be thorough and get all of them on the outside and the inside. Using that same ratio, we're going to then apply it to the tentacles, following it all the way to where we did our foul green nodes near the body. I'm only going to do a light glaze on the first 3 or 4 green nodes furthest from his body to blend those colors together so we have a nice gradient of green from his body going down to the blue of the skull. Next, we're going to change our ratio from 1:1 to 1:2 of Talazar blue and medium, and we're going to work on blending out the white to the blue on the skull. So I'm trying to keep the brightest part of the skull to be in the center and then have it blend into the blue. So this may take 2 coats, but just do as much as you need to get a nice blend of white to blue. Going back to our white, we're then going to thin it down a decent amount, and we're just going to add a small dot to the eye and onto the orb on his back to finalize our glowing sources. I forgot to do this part after our base colors were applied, so you can do it now if you want, but carefully add some Rhinox hide to a piece of foam and apply some white marks onto the metal, making sure to avoid any glowing elements we just did. And there you have it. Thank you everyone for watching, and hopefully this inspires you to try this game for yourself or to try some different methods on your own Necrons. Don't forget to subscribe for more. I have videos for Krieg, Thousand Suns, and more Primaris Space Marines in the works, so be sure to check back later and have a great day.